Before Mushoku Tensei, there was now and then, here and there, what is commonly referred by anime connoisseurs to be the greatest isekai story of the medium. And yeah, I can see where they're coming from, but personally, I thought it was just okay. Maybe even a little better than okay. I definitely think it's up in the upper echelon of the genre, and though you don't hear about it as often as you should, it's still having little ripples every so often now and then. But there's just a few things in there I don't think age all that well over time, and they're not the things you think I'm talking about. So, what is it about this anime I don't fully embrace, and where does it actually stand on the isekai podium of today? A boy named Shu is living his ordinary youth when he climbs a smokestack to get a good view. There, he strikes up a conversation with a mysterious girl named Lalaru as they watch the sunset together. But before they know it, they're attacked by an army of mechs where they're all transferred to Lalaru's original world of war and drought. As Shu and Lalaru try to flee the army after her, they're eventually separated, with Lalaru imprisoned and Shu tortured for Lalaru's necklace that he lost. He's eventually conscripted to the army where he consistently voiced his objections to violence and war. How will Shu get back home, and what's to become of this wasteland drowned in blood and sand? So, the first thing I associate with this show is how very 90s it is, and I mean that in a very positive way. It comes near the end of the century, but the styling and the atmosphere are rich in the entirety of the 90s aesthetic, from its animation to its dialogue to its soundtrack, and it encapsulates the fine-tuned rawness of the decade's feel quite well. The second thing I think about from the show is how very 90s it is, and I mean that in a less favorable way. The writing and the overall themes aren't the most creative, and already have their places in other 90s anime and even other sources of media. This is very much an anti-war anime, and they will take every opportunity they can to make sure you know it. Now, we've seen anti-war messages appear in shows and movies before and after this one, and on the spectrum, this one's not awful, but it's not as well put or elegant as even a few more average examples like After War Gundam or, heck, even the first Pokemon movie. But now and then, it shoves its stance frequently, and I wouldn't have a problem with this if it was more nuanced or had a sharper understanding of the circumstances of war, but no, it's very black and white on the idea. And I get it, there is a ton of senseless violence in the world, and sometimes that too is inevitable with those types of authorities. But that's all it is here. The use of child soldiers is seen as cruel, those leading the charge are egomaniacal or bootlickers just doing their jobs, the casualties are always seen as tragic. These are not hot takes. I'd argue that they're pretty cold, and they're handled better in other media. On top of that, the story's just standard in terms of relaying these motifs. It's just a power-hungry asshole trying to rule the world, and the people around him suffering. It's honestly just boring in the sense that it's predictable gruel that doesn't offer anything new or productive. So I guess after that, it makes it sound like I don't like this show. And while I do have massive problems with it, there are a few good things to it. One, I kind of like Shu. Yeah, he's a preachy, wide-eyed innocent tainted by war, and by all means, has the same issues as the writing in that he's pretty standard, but there is something charming about him. His conversation with Lalaru is really pleasant, and I honestly think he steals the scene. He's the same with the girl named Sarah, reassuring her everything will be okay. Spoilers, it won't be, but it is a lighthearted and empowering little speech. He does kind of get annoying over the course of the series, but not to an extent of deteriorating his impact. He's still positive, but willing to fight back harder for his convictions, and it makes sense for what he's seen. He's not bad. Then there's the big villain, King Hamdo. He looks pretty tame, hell, even kind of lame with that haircut, but don't let that fool you. This guy is fucking insane. He's a humongous narcissist, paranoid slimeball of a tyrant that stops at nothing to get what he wants by way of his ego and whims. This guy is peak anime villain, forcing kids to fight for him, abusing animals, and will stick his guard on you for looking at him funny. Why? Because he can. He's a dangerous person to have in power. Someone with the military forces of an empire and the mentality of a spoiled brat who's never been told no in his life. His subordinates feed into his ego, his people suffer by his greed, and his selfish entitlement to everything with the means to have everything makes him a terrifying force to be reckoned with. He's not even the most complex part of the show, but ironically, he might be the best thing that's aged by today's standards. The rest of the cast aren't as good. Dare I say, they're on par with the story. Bland, cliched, deep back then, but horribly one-note today. Not because the brooding victim of war trying to survive in the army, Abelia's the yes woman whose loyalty is woefully misplaced, Lala Rouge the emotionless cog in the story's machine, and nothing else. They're fine for what they do, but nothing that screams brilliant and innovative. And I guess I should address the elephant in the room. So if you're triggered by instances of sexual assault and violence towards women, skip ahead to this part of the video. So Sarah, a prisoner of war, is used as an object of relief by Hamdo's army, and yeah, it's kind of brutal. I'll say it might actually be the most unique part of the story, as I don't see a ton of other shows spotlight this part of war. As for its necessity, it's kind of weird. They never show it, thankfully, but it definitely happens, with each passing occurrence breaking Sarah's emotional state until she can't handle it anymore. Though she manages to escape, the ripples of the trauma still haunt her throughout the series, and is handled very maturely and respectfully. She goes through the proper grieving process and has an almost perfect arc in coming to terms with it. Almost. You see, near the end of the series, she makes a very weird decision that I won't spoil, but it's weird. I can't place my finger on it, partially because I don't have any knowledge or experience with what she went through, but it might be the way they pace it and how Sarah comes to her conclusion, but I don't know. It felt unnatural for some reason, but that might just be me. Now and then, here and there, is a marvel of a work that may have eroded over the years. There are clear ideas of grandeur and want for change embedded in its presentation, but it struggles with its writing and the weathering times. I think there are great things in it. The villain's diabolical, there are some decent fight scenes in there, and even part of the story's not bad as it is done with reverence and regard. I'll give them this, it did have me rooting for characters like Shu and Sarah, not out of obligation, but because there was something genuine to be seen in their tales. But do I think it ranks high among his isekai peers? Personally, no. It has clunky writing, a mostly moot cast, and a bare-bones plot with basic themes. But I do acknowledge its influence in telling character stories of hardship, maybe not as a direct influence to some, but I wouldn't be surprised if it came out that Subaru or Rudius took inspiration from this. If you want to see one of the greatest hailed isekai of all time, yeah, watch it. People do hail it. But if you're curious about what this bum thinks is an okay-ish isekai with its moments, tread carefully. You may find yourself drowning in a sea of mediocrity.